Howdy.
Hello.
Do you have the link to print
Yeah.
this out?
Yeah, the source is here. I'll attach it right now. I'll attach
You want to leave it on the screen?
Yeah.
Or,
there we go. No, a second. Sorry. Yeah, I attached the thing to the chat.
Thank you.
okay.
Hey, Ralph, welcome.
Ah,
Okay.
Oh, hey, Shelly, Ray, and Ralph. Welcome, guys. Okay, I just attached the source sheet, the study sheet, to the chat, so you're welcome to download it. It's also here on the screen, so you don't have to download and print it. If you don't like to, that's fine. Let's jump in. Brother Jay is waiting. We're learning.
Asher, we are here, even that you can't see us for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay, I see also Jonathan is here. Wow. And Sylvia and Yosef, you guys are here, even though we can't see you. Okay, that's a little taste of Hashem, a little taste of God. You're here, even though we can't see you.
I'm turning off the phone.
Oh, there, I can see you now. Hey, Sylvia, Yosef. Nice vest, Yosef. Okay, so we are learning, of course, for the refuah shlema, for the complete healing, recovery of anybody that is sick, physically, spiritually, mentally, including Shlomo ben Clara and Yehonatan ben Malka. And anybody here is welcome to say names of people that you know that need healing. And we're learning for the healing, of course, of the world in large, people sick with corona and other diseases. And of course, like I've mentioned in the past, for the healing and recovery of what the United States of America is going through, and everybody involved there.
And
Okay.
Shmuel Lev ben Shifra.
Shmuel Lev ben Shifra. Shkoch Rei.
Yes.
Okay, so guys, I'm just going to do, Mamish, just for 5 minutes, a short recap on what we saw last time, because some people that are here, excuse me, were not here last time. I promise that it's going to be very brief. Okay, last time, in the last meeting we had about a week ago, in trying to uncover and unwrap this very odd individual, very unique person, Brother Jay, or as he's called in Hebrew, Yeshu, okay, Yud Shin Vav, Yeshu, which is also a nickname for his full name, Yehoshua, and it also stands for, like we said before, Yemach Shemo V'Zichro. May his name and memory be obliterated, be erased. And that we know why we've suffered hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Jews have suffered as a result of this guy's actions, or as a result of the actions that were attributed to him by some of his disciples, followers, and so on. Okay, but I'm jumping ahead. I pointed out, I shared with you guys last time, you know, there's friends of mine here in Katsrin and other parts of Israel that really prefer not to study or even mention Brother Jay, and not to get involved in it, and not to see any sources, because it's such like a bad part of our history. It's such a sore wound. It's so painful. But I tried to share with you guys that even though that is true, okay, we've been through a lot. We've suffered a lot as a result of this guy. Nonetheless, it's important to learn what the Torah, what the sources say about him for a number of reasons. The first reason that I shared with you guys last time was that Torah has what to say about everything in life. Torah, halacha, Jewish law, it doesn't only have what to say when you put a dairy spoon into a chicken soup, and now what do? Torah doesn't only have what to say how to pray, how to daven from your siddur, that's also important, or how to study, and so on. Torah also has what to say about every small and seemingly unimportant and important aspect in our lives. And also about this, okay, since Torah is the desire, the will, the wisdom of Hashem, of God, so obviously God has what to say about everything, and he has goals that he wants us to reach eventually. So the Torah has what to say about everything, including this subject. Okay, so that's first of all. That was the first reason. Okay, the second reason that I shared last time is that we're living in a world which is greatly affected by this guy, by this individual, by Brother Jay. We're living in the Middle East, Muslims all around us, but all in all, we're part of a very Western, liberal, so to speak, world, which is strongly affected consciously and subconsciously by Brother Jay and by his religion, Christianity. So it's important to know where it came from. Okay, what does the Torah, what do the rabbis have to say about this? And how much should I do as a Jewish person to be involved or not involved, to be affected or not affected? Again, consciously, subconsciously, where do I stand? Who was this guy? What are the problems with him? What can I learn from this story? Okay, and that was the third thing that I shared. There's a lot that we can learn from what he went through and what happened to him from our sources, and things that hopefully can make us better people and holier Jews at the end of the day. Okay? And last but not least, guys, was to do a little Seder, to put things in order, because there's a lot of broken telephone, a lot of unclear information about him. Okay, how did the rabbis treat him? Why did he leave Judaism? Did we kill him? Did the Romans kill him? There's a lot of broken telephone and misguided information. So this is also important to know what's up, what's going on. It's not just some other Jew who left Judaism and moved to Tibet, to some mountain, and meditated there till he died. This is a real significant Jew who had a huge impact and continues to have an impact on the world around us. Okay, so it's very important that we know what's going on, who's against who, what was his deal, and so on. Last time, guys, we saw a few things. We saw a few sources here on the top of the page mentioning different clues and like breadcrumbs that could lead us to mention and discussion of Brother Jay in the Talmud and in the Tanakh as well, in the Chumash as well, the Bible as well. I mentioned, of course, that sometimes it's very hard to find sources about Brother Jay, okay, for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons was that the rabbis, even though they sometimes speak about him, they were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They didn't want to mention him too often and give him glory, give him honor, give him the spotlight, give him all this attention, thus helping spread Christianity basically and making a big deal out of him. If you don't mention the pink elephant in the room, people might ignore it. So that was one reason why the rabbis tried not to mention him by name explicitly, or not to talk about him too much, or not to talk about him in his own name. A second reason is that they did not want to invite, of course, the next pogrom to their doorstep. Yeah, we know that throughout history, and until 1967 or even a bit later, okay, Jews were blamed for his death, and many hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters, they were burnt alive, okay, raped, murdered, exiled because of this. But that was another reason why the information sometimes is hard to access. And last but not least, there's a lot of censorship that was enforced in the 16th century, mostly by the Pope, by the Vatican. A lot of censorship on the Jewish sources about Brother Jay. Okay, the Pope then, I can't remember his name right now, but the Pope then decreed that they have to, all the Jewish sources, the classic Jewish sources like the Mishnah, the Talmud, have to be examined, and all the things which speak derogatory or even hint to some negative issues with Brother Jay or Christianity have to be erased, okay, marked out and deleted. So that's another reason why till today, if you go into your local Jewish bookstore or order online at Barnes & Noble or Amazon or whatever it is, many of the classic books, including the Talmud, still have the censored versions. I'll show you guys in a few moments an example of that. Okay, that's another reason why it's difficult to get the sources. Nonetheless, we did a little work and we got the sources, and where we're holding right now, guys, is right down here, is the main story. Brother Jay and his great departure, okay, from Judaism. Any questions so far? No? We good? Guys, feel free to jump in. This is not a Yom Kippur sermon. Feel free to jump in and ask, comment, okay, remark. Okay, so we saw last time, we started seeing this fascinating story from the Gemara, from the Talmud, keeping in mind that most versions, most editions of this tractate, Talmud, Gemara, Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin tractate. Most editions till today that you buy in the store will not have it on the page. Sometimes it will be brought on the side of the page in small words. Okay, but your classic edition of this Talmud usually doesn't have the following source. Okay, and I gave a little background to the following source. We're talking about 80, 90 BCE when this story takes place. 80 to 90 BCE. Okay, we're talking about a time when one of the descendants of the Maccabees of the Hashmonaean kingdom, his name was Alexander Yanai or Alexander Janus. He was one of the descendants of the Maccabees, and unfortunately, he had a very, very, very strong ego, and he wanted to be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and also be the king. And there's supposed to be, I'm just going to borrow this terminology, even though it's not 100% accurate. In an ideal Jewish state, there's supposed to be separation between the temple and state. Okay? Between the temple and state. There's supposed to be a king from the tribe of Judah. He takes care of the national affairs of the state of Israel, of the physical requirements and demands, military, financially wise, and so on. And then there's supposed to be another guy from the tribe of Levite, from the Levite tribe, specifically from the family of Aaron, the priest, the Kohen, and that's supposed to be the high priest, and he's supposed to take care of the spiritual aspect of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, this guy, who was a Kohen, who was a priest, he was a great-great-grandchild of the Maccabees, he decided to do both, to dance on both weddings. He wanted to control everything. That didn't lead to good things. There are many sources about it in our writings, in the Talmud, and there are more sources about it in the book of Josephus, the book of Yosef ben Matityahu, who writes about him as well. The book of Josephus, the history of the Jews, and a number of other books that he wrote. To make a long story short, guys, the rabbis at the time objected to the King Yanai, King Janus's actions. They objected to him. They verbally took a stand. He did not take that kindly. He brought in mercenaries. And to make a very long and sad story short, he eventually butchered and massacred and killed, thousands of Jews. He killed thousands of Jews. The rough estimate, according to Josephus, is about 50,000 Jews. In addition to that, he wiped out the majority of the rabbinic leadership in Israel at the time. Some rabbis went into hiding, kind of like, Marano style, Inquisition style. They went into hiding in Israel, and some rabbis fled Israel. Okay, and that brings us back to where we were last week. Okay, this only took us about 10 minutes. That brings us back to where we ended last week. Okay, and that's the beginning, and that's the story right here, number 6, about what happened. I just have to point this out. This is important. I didn't translate this part into English, which I should have. This whole story begins by this following statement. The rabbis taught, Le'olam tiyeh smol doche v'yamin mekarevet. A person always has to make sure to push away, to discipline with their left hand, meaning the left hand metaphorically represents a person being strict with others, a person implementing judgment, a person standing their ground, discipline, and so on. That's the left hand. So the rabbis say, you got to discipline, you got to be strict with your left hand. But at the same time, yamin mekarevet, you got to balance that out with your right hand. Meaning, you can't always push away people. You can't always discipline. You can't always teach people a lesson. You got to also bring people close to you. You got to show love. Okay, you got to spread the love and be kind and loving. So it's a fine balance. One of the examples that the rabbis bring is the following story about someone who did not do that. The rabbis say, Lo ki Rabbi Yoshua ben Parchia. Do not behave like Rabbi Yoshua, the son of Parchia. He did not behave in this fine, balanced way of pushing away and bringing close at the same time. The yin and yang. Rabbi Yoshua ben Parchia did not behave like that. And here's a story about him. Okay, and here we go. I'm starting again from the beginning, even though we saw the beginning last week. I'm just going to read it straight off into English. What's the deal with Yoshua ben Parchia? Okay, so when King Yanai was killing the sages, like I just shared with you guys, again, we're talking 80 to 90 BCE, King Yanai was killing the sages. Yoshua ben Parchia, who was a big rabbi, who's one of the Tanaim, meaning he's mentioned in the Mishnah. This is a huge rabbi, not some, not some local small town rabbi. So Yoshua ben Prachia, okay, and Yeshu, his student Yeshu. Ding, 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 okay, light bulb going off. That's Brother Jay. But at this time, he's still called Yehoshua. When this part of the story is unfolding, the student is still called Yoshua. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Parchia went with his student to Alexandria in Egypt, okay, one of the Greek cities named after Alexander the Great. Okay, they went down to Egypt. Why did they go down to Egypt? They went down there to escape, okay, the killing spree that King Yanai, King Janus was on. So they fled from Israel. Now Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, guys, he takes with him, he doesn't take with him all of his students. He can't afford that and afford the risk of fleeing Israel with the mercenaries of the king on his tail, wanting to kill him and take his whole yeshiva with him, all of his students. He obviously can't do that. So what does he do? He takes one student. He takes, like, I think it's safe to say, but of course it doesn't say this in the story. I think it's safe to say that he takes his most, like, prized possession, the student that has the most potential, the student that again could continue the lineage of the rabbinic leadership in Israel. He takes with him someone who he knows he could rely on, who will continue spreading Torah and teaching the oral law, the Torah Shebaal Peh. Okay, what is his student's name? Okay, Yoshua, eventually to be called Yeshu. Okay, he's not taking from his yeshiva the guy that hangs out on his phone all day, making coffee and, playing chess and other, Candy Crush or whatever on his phone. He takes with him, the cream of the crop of his yeshiva, Yoshua, Yeshu. So they go to Alexandria of Egypt. Okay, when there was peace, when King Yanai calmed down and he stopped killing the rabbis, the sages. So Shimon ben Shetach, a good friend of Yoshua ben Prachia, Shimon ben Shetach sends a letter to Yoshua ben Prachia. Shimon ben Shetach was able to stay in Israel and not be killed, and I explained this last week because he specifically happened to be the brother-in-law of King Yanai. His sister Shlom Tzion was married to this psychotic, crazy king, okay, King Yanai. So Shimon ben Shetach stayed in Israel, and when King Yanai come down, Shimon ben Shetach sent this, like, coded letter, this nice kind of, like, romantic letter to his friend Yoshua ben Prachia, who's in Alexandria in Egypt, and he writes, "From me, Jerusalem, the holy city, to you, Alexandria of Egypt, my sister." He's referring to Yoshua, like, metaphorically as his sister. "My husband is located among you, and I sit desolate." Okay, meaning that Israel is waiting. Israel is sitting desolate, waiting for you, Yoshua ben Prachia, to come back. Okay, great. Yoshua gets the letter, and what does he do? He comes back. What's called in Hebrew, Toshav Chozer. He's a returning resident to Israel. Okay, but the Gemara says it very beautifully. The Gemara does not say, okay, look here in the Hebrew, in the Aramaic, after he gets the letter, the Gemara does not say Ata, he came to Israel. What does the Gemara say? Kam, he got up. Also in English, he arose. Obviously, what does that mean, he arose? Because if you're living in exile and you're moving back to Israel, you're going up. You're getting up spiritually, not only physically. It's an elevation to come back to the Holy Land. So it's very beautiful. So he got up. You can imagine his emotions, his feelings, his longings to come back to Israel. Okay, and he came and happened at a certain inn. Okay, Ahu Ushpiza. Ushpiza is an inn, like the Ushpizin on Sukkot, the guests. Okay, and Ushpiza is a guest house, like a Econo Lodge, Motel 6, Motel 8, whatever it is. So he gets to this motel. Who's with him? His student, Yeshu is with him. Okay, so they get to this hotel, Avdule Yikara Tuva. As you can see here in English, they really treated them. They gave them the penthouse with the jacuzzi. They gave them 3 meals a day, free massage, the hot room, the cold room, and the sauna, everything. Top of the line treatment. So Yoshua ben Parchia mentions he mentions kind of to his student, or perhaps he just says it to people next to him, or he just is sharing his feelings into the air, and he says, Kama yafa achsan yazo. Wow, this guest house, this hotel, this Ramada, the Marriott, this is beautiful. It's a beautiful place. They treat us so nicely. It's unbelievable. Okay. Amarle, he said back to him, his student, Yeshu, responded to the teacher, Yoshua ben Parchia, okay, and said back to him, what did he say to him? My teacher, her eyes are narrow. Tutot, that's the word in Aramaic. Her eyes, meaning Yoshua, the student, Yeshu, responded to his teacher by commenting on the physical. There's no metaphorical, Kabbalistic, things going on here. He commented back to his teacher about the physical appearance, okay, of the landlady, of the Barat Habayit, of the owner of this hotel. So can you imagine the shock, okay, of Yoshua ben Parchia, that he thought he took his prize student down to Egypt. He thought his student is thinking about, God and Abraham and Isaac and Torah and Kabbalah and soul and Neshamot and all, and he's checking out the girls. He's like one of those guys sitting on the beach, checking out and giving numbers like some people do, unfortunately, to women. Okay, he's objectifying this lady, and this is a student that he decided to take out of all his students. That some of them were probably killed by the king. It's like unbelievable. So he says to him, "Wicked one." So Yoshua ben Parchia is like, what? He's like in total shock. It's like being, like a military shock. Wicked one, he says to him, okay? And then what did he do? And he says to him, this is what you're involved in? Well, I can't believe this. I thought you've been focusing on your soul and God. You've been checking out the ladies. He produced 400 shofarot and ostracized him, excommunicated him. That's part of what was done back then. If somebody was excommunicated, you would take out a shofar and blow it. The Talmud here, the Gemara here, is either exaggerating or expressing how hurt and how shocked Yoshua ben Parchia was that he didn't blow one shofar, he blew 400 of them. Or he blew the same shofar 400 times, whatever it was, and he excommunicated Yeshu. He said to him, I want nothing to do with you. You're not my student anymore. Get out of my life. Okay? And it makes sense. It makes sense. Remember what was at stake here. Okay? The continuity of the Jewish tradition, which was being wiped out by King Yanai, by King Janus. And his student, instead of being in that headspace, he's in a totally different, very negative, unspiritual headspace. So he excommunicates him. Okay. The Gemara continues. He came before him several times and said to him, accept me. Okay, you can see it here in Aramaic. Ata lekame kama zimnin amar le kablan. He came to him, brother J to be, he's still Yeshu, came back to his teacher, Yoshua ben Parchia, a number of times. He came back to him, asking him to take him back, asking him for a second chance. Basically asking him to use his right hand now and bring him close, show him some love, not only reject. But what happened? He took no notice of him. He didn't pay attention to him. He gave him a really strong cold shoulder. He still wanted to teach him his lesson. His left was still pushing back. He was standing his ground, Yoshua ben Parchia. One day, and this ended up being the real fateful day, he was reciting Shema. Yoshua ben Parchia was davening, was saying Shema, which is one of the most important, if not the most important prayers that we have. You're not supposed to even stop Shema if you're interrupted by royalty or by a snake. Okay, so he's saying Shema, and Brother Jay came back. He came before him. He came again to ask him to take him back, give him a second chance, not reject. And what's so sad here is that Yoshua ben Parchia intended to accept him. He said to himself, before he started saying Shema, he said, okay, if he comes back, he learned his lesson. I rejected him enough of times. Okay, I disciplined him enough of times. The next time he comes, I'm going to accept him. But now he came back, and an unfortunate turn of events or coincidence, He intended to accept him, and he singled him with his hand. Yoshua, brother Jay comes, okay, and he wants to be accepted. Yoshua ben Parchia wants to accept him back as a student, but he couldn't. He's saying Shema. You're not supposed to stop. You're not supposed to stop in the middle of Shema. So Yoshua ben Parchia did some kind of signal to Yeshu. Maybe it was this, like we do in Israel. Maybe it was that. And when I read this story, it's hilarious. It's hilariously sad because he singled him with his hand, and Yoshua, brother Jay, thought he's pushing me away. Meaning Yoshua ben Parchia went like that. Wait a second, like that. And Yeshu took that to mean something else. Okay, he took that, maybe that finger in a different context, and he took that as being rejected again, even if it was that. Somehow that broken telephone happened, and Yoshua thought that once again he's being shoved away. So what happened, guys? Okay, the Gemara says he went and he put a brick upright. He took a brick, a stone, he put it upright, and he bowed to it. He started praying to it. He started worshiping it. Okay, not monotheism. Nothing about, the Father, the Ghost, all that stuff. No, flat out idol worship, avodah zarah. Okay, he said to him, Yoshua ben Parchia, the teacher, said to his former student, do tshuva, repent. Brother Jay said back to him, this is the tradition that I received from you. I learned from you in the past. Whoever sins and causes the masses to sin is not given the opportunity to repent, to do tshuva. Meaning that in between this part, that he went and put a brick upright and worshipped it, and the response of his teacher, we're not talking a few seconds. According to what the Gemara is saying here, that the Talmud is saying here, Brother Jay went, he got involved in idol worship, and he got other Jews involved, and he convinced other Jews to follow him, and only after that, sometime, someday, some years, a few months later, his rabbi, his former rabbi, Yoshua ben Parchia, meets him and tells him to repent. Brother Jay responds, listen, it's too late. I already learned from you in the past that someone who sins and causes others to sin, as I have done, does not have the opportunity, the heavenly opportunity, to repent, to do tshuva, which I will add is not exactly true. Everybody has a chance to repent and to do tshuva. The rabbis continue, so that's the end of the story. The rabbis now in the Talmud say, okay, the master says, Amar Mar, okay, that's over here, Amar Mar, Yeshu, brother Jay, Kishef, he did witchcraft, Vehesit, Vehediach et Israel. He incited and he convinced Jews to engage in idolatry, and he led the Jewish people astray. Heartbreaking, huh? Okay. There's a number of important details that we saw in the story that the Talmud mentions that I'm not sure if you all noticed. I'm sure some of you or all of you noticed many of them. Okay, I just want to point out, okay, what we see from the story. The Talmud starts off by saying a person has to be careful, not to be too strict, not to be too aggressive, not to reject too much. They also have to accept and show love. And what example is brought to someone who did not do that? The Gemara brings an example of how not to behave, and they bring this story. They bring this story of Yoshua ben Parchia and his student Yeshu, brother Jay, and they're basically saying that the rabbi, the leader here, was too strict, was too rough, and he made a mistake. And a person, okay, should not behave like that. And what's amazing, guys, about this story is, first of all, this is such a tragic story. But before we get into the teachings and the important information that we can extract from this on a theological level, first of all, there's raw, important, practical information. I mentioned in the beginning of the story, and I'm not sure if you let that sink in, that this story happens during the time of Alexander Yanai, okay, King Janus, who, as Josephus talks about, and the Talmud, and you can look it up, of course, This puts us about 80 to 90 BCE. Okay, so what does that mean? That means, guys, that if this story took place as the Talmud is explaining, and we're talking about Brother J here, when did this story take place? 80 to 90 BCE. Meaning, Brother J was not born, according to the Talmud, at the year 0. If this story is taking place at 80 to 90 BCE, that would put his birth about 110 years roughly, or something like that, 110 years before the Christian version of his birth. Okay, now it's 2020, because the Christians did a lot of changes in the calendar and the Gregorian calendar. We all know that, but they're basically counting 2020 years to his birth, give or take. According to this story, he was born 100 and something years before what the Christian world claims. You guys get that? That's a big, okay? That's the first important information, and we'll see that this is not by chance. This is deliberate, okay? And there's a reason the rabbis explain. I'm not sure if we're gonna get to it today, but there's a reason for why the Christian version will put him at 0 CE, even though he apparently lived in 100 BCE. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second of all, guys, what we saw over here, okay, he went and put a brick upright and he bowed down to it. I mentioned this, okay, just a moment ago. According to our version, he was not spreading godliness and monotheism and the belief in one God, and he had issues with the rabbinic leadership and what was going on in the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, and all that. Perhaps he did have issues, but when he branched off of Judaism, he wasn't giving a different alternative to worshiping God, the one and only God, as Christianity basically paints a picture. According to this story in the Talmud, he got into heavy-duty idol worship, to avodah zarah, to bowing down to stones, okay, sticks and stones, idols, not God, not monotheism. That's another important piece of information that we got from here. The date of his birth, and the track that he took was idolatry, and not a different version of how to worship or pray to God, believe in God. Not at all. What's also, guys, heartbreaking about this, I mean, can we imagine for just a moment what Yoshua ben Prachia, the teacher, was going through? First of all, how he was let down when he realized his student was checking out what he should not be checking out. Okay, can we imagine the brokenness, okay, that Yoshua ben Prachia felt when his student joined the dark side and got involved in avodah zarah and idol worship? Can we imagine, did Brother Jay even know what his actions would cause down the line? Did he see? He obviously didn't. But did he know what his actions would cause? The Inquisition, pogroms, Holocaust, and so many other things that he caused to his very own people as a result of his actions? Okay, both these people, Brother Jay was not aware of the ramifications of his actions. And as the Gemara says, I would not say this obviously, but the Gemara said that Yoshua ben Prachia seemingly was not aware, and he behaved way too strict. Could he imagine in 1,000 years that him being too strict with one of his students would years later, snowball into this avalanche of pain and suffering to the Jewish people because he mistreated his very own student? I don't think so. And again, did Brother Jay imagine in his wildest dreams what would happen as a result of him getting into idol worship and also getting students, okay, and disciples? Okay, both of them made bad decisions that till today, okay, we suffer from. So this is fascinating. I just want to pause here for just a moment because I mentioned that there are things that we can learn from this story. Okay, and we're going to continue with the evolution of this story in just a moment. But there's things that we can learn from this story that can hopefully make us, okay, better people. First of all, at least what I took, and perhaps you'll relate to this as well, is that we have no clue. We have no idea, okay, what will happen as a result of our actions. we cannot see into the future the butterfly effect and the ripples and the waves that are caused by good decisions that we make and not so good decisions that we make. Just like these two guys, like Yoshua ben Parchia, the big rabbi, the big tzaddik, who's mentioned in the Mishnah, we'll see in just a moment, and also his former student, Brother Jay. They had no idea what would happen as a result of their decisions and actions. So I'm saying for us, okay, that's a huge teaching. It's a huge reminder that for all our decisions that we make, whether we choose this path or that path, okay, that whether we shop at that store, whether we decide to yell at our children or at our friend or not yell, whether we decide to smile at somebody, whatever it is, we have no idea what it might cause down the line. And so therefore we have to be as careful as possible and think, we all know that, think before we speak, but this is a perfect example of what might happen when you don't think enough and you don't behave and act in the most desirable, proper way. So that's one teaching that I took out of this story. A reminder, a psychological reminder. Asher, think before you speak. Try to analyze the situation and make the best decision possible, because you never, ever know what might really evolve down the line in the future from your actions right now in the present. Okay? That's first of all. Second of all, of course, as the Talmud says, not to be too harsh, not to be too strict on people, not to stand your ground too much. Show some love, show some kindness. Make sure if you need to be strict, if you need to criticize, try to make it constructive criticism. If you need to be really harsh with employees, with your friends, with your family, whoever it is, fine. But you got to make sure to balance that out. Okay, you got to make sure to give them some sweetness after the bitterness, because look again what happens when that balance did not take place. Okay, and third of all, and this is an important message that I got from the story, is that sometimes we might think we know somebody. They act in a certain way, they dress in a certain way, they speak in a certain way, they're part of a certain society, community, and we think we got them labeled and categorized, and they're a certain individual, and then all of a sudden they do something and totally uncharacteristic of who we labeled them to be, of who we thought that they are. Okay, and that's exactly what happened in the story. Yoshua ben Parchia takes his prodigy, the cream of the crop of his students, his most down to Egypt with him, because he's a student that he can rely on to continue the Jewish tradition. Turns out, this guy is totally not involved in the books, totally not focusing on his relationship with God. He's focusing on the ladies, okay? Like the Talmud says, like the Gemara says, which is a big lesson, because you never, ever really know what a human being is like inside. Okay? Like Shlomo would always say, you never know. A person could look like the holiest person on the outside, and they could be the most unholy, so to speak, person on the inside. They could look like and behave like the most, horrible, or speak in such a raw and barbaric kind of way, but for whatever reason, but on the inside, they're the sweetest and holiest and purest person ever. And this story is an important reminder of this exact teaching. Okay?
Can I ask you something?
Yes, yeah, jump in, Shaul.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. How sure are we that we are talking about the right, we call it Brother G? Because the story you're telling is unique for me, and how sure are we that you're talking about the right person?
I would say it's 99%. That there are some people that debate it. Okay, there are some people that debate this, that perhaps there was another guy also called Yoshua and also nicknamed Yeshu, but it wasn't the Yeshu, the Brother J that we know. Okay? But that's mostly affected that's mostly affected by the seemingly contradiction in the dates, in the time period. That if this took place in 80, 90 BCE, then this can't be Brother J. But again, I'm going to share with you guys in the future, probably not today, but next week, okay, sources, again, rabbinic sources, which will speak about this. Why would the Christians push his birth 100 years forward if in fact, in reality, he was born 100 years before. Okay, and there's a big thing. There's a whole thing going on there.
Because I think it's important to be sure that we're talking about the right person. Otherwise,
Yeah, it's 90. It's but like I said in the beginning last week,
no.
everything has to be taken with a grain of salt because of all the censorship and the rabbis being careful to speak about him too much, give him too much glory, attention, and pogrom and all that stuff, anti-Semitism. But almost 100%. Okay, and almost all the commentaries and rabbis that I've seen who speak about this Talmud, this piece in the Gemara, agree that this is Brother J. Okay, guys, the next source is fascinating. The next number 7 here is amazing because in Pirkei Avot, okay, in the ethics of our fathers, in the Mishnah, there are a number of teachings brought there from different rabbis, and these were basically the ideology or the flags of these rabbis. It wasn't just some random Torah idea that this rabbi shared at some Sheva Brachos, at some wedding, or at some Purim party. The ideas brought down in Pirkei Avot were the essence, were the represented what these rabbis really tried to preach and share and teach about. So in the Mishnah, this is unbelievable. In the Mishnah, it brings a quote from Yoshua ben Plachia, the same rabbi that we just saw, the rabbi of Brother J. And what does the Mishnah bring in his name? What does Yoshua ben Plachia say? Aseh lecha rav. Make sure to find a rabbi. Make sure to find a teacher. Ukneh lecha chaver. Acquire for yourself a good friend. You got to have a spiritual leader, and you also have to have a good friend that you can rely on. And what does he say? What's the third thing that he says? Veheved dan et kol ha'adam lekaf zchut. You should try to judge everybody with a scale weighted in their favor, meaning to judge everybody favorably. Do you guys see any connection to this story that we just saw in the Talmud? This is amazing. I mean, there's no way, it's impossible to know if he said this, that you should judge somebody for the benefit of the doubt, the scale weighed in their favor, if you should look at them in a positive light, if he said this before this story took place, or after, and perhaps as a result of this story. Perhaps. When I read that Mishnah, the first time I read that Mishnah, I had no idea about the story. But after I learned that story in the Talmud, and then I reread that Mishnah, I said to myself, wow, if only we were able to date and kind of like Discovery Channel or National Geographic and the Safari might tag an animal, and then you can see what happens in the different periods and everything it goes through. If only we were able to know when Yoshua ben Prachia said this. Did he say this as a result of this story or before? I'd like to think, it sounds nice, and it seems to make sense, that this happened as a result of the story. And he kind of learned his lesson, like the rabbis say. And he saw what might happen if you don't judge somebody for the benefit of the doubt. If you don't judge them, lekaf zchut. Okay? That's an amazing thing. And, again, that's another teaching for us to judge everybody favorably, even if they behaved in a very horrible way, as his ex-student, Brother J, Yeshu, did. Okay, I'm going to go now backtrack for this is probably going to be the end of our class for tonight, to the brick. Because if you remember it in the story, what does the Talmud say? He put a brick upright and he bowed to it. Okay, he bowed down to the brick. So the question is, guys, and again, this is so different than the classic Christian approach. Again, he did flat out avodah zarah, flat out idol worship. The question is, was it literally a brick? Or was it some idol? Was it some stone? Why does the Talmud say it was a brick and not some stone? Okay, some carved object, some idol. Why is the terminology a brick? Is it because that's what exactly happened? It was a brick in reality? Or it might have been some kind of idol, some kind of inanimate object, some kind of stone structure or a stone piece. But the brick is a terminology to describe what exactly was going on here. and there's something deeper going on than it just being a brick. Okay, so let's jump in. Okay, we're gonna see first of all the brick in Midrash Bereshit Rabbah number 8. When the Midrash talks about Yishmael, good old Yishmael, or not so good old Yishmael, Avram Avinu and Hagar's child, who we know eventually left the home of good old Abe, and eventually, Islam. It's much more complex than that, but eventually Islam, is an offshoot of Yishmael. So, what the Torah says that Yishmael was mitzachek, was fooling around, was indecent, was immoral, depending on the English translation that you choose. Okay? He was fooling around and having a bad negative effect on Yitzchak. What does the Midrash say? What was he doing? He put a brick upright and kissed it. Look at that. And this would have happened years before, Brother Jay. So this is the son of Avraham, who again goes off in a not so healthy direction. And what does he do? He takes a brick and he puts it upright, which is exactly the terminology used for Brother Jay here. Okay? Is that a coincidence? I highly doubt that. Okay, second source, number 9 here. Okay, the Gemara, in bringing an example, the Gemara discusses, okay, at what point do different physical objects become prohibited to be used by a Jew if they were used or intended to be used for idol worship purposes? Okay, and there's a whole discussion in this part in the Talmud. So the Talmud says, Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav says, a Jewish person who put a brick upright to bow down to it, but did not bow down to it, did not worship it yet. This Jewish guy put a brick upright. I wonder where he got that idea from. Okay, to bow down to it, but he didn't yet. And then a Gentile, a non-Jew came and bowed down to the brick. Then he rendered it prohibited. At that moment on, you cannot use that brick. It might have been a brick that was hanging out with a bunch of other bricks because you were expanding your home, hopefully legally. But now that this non-Jewish person bowed down to it and used it for idolatry, you cannot use it. It's off limits. Okay, it's impure. So once again, we see in 2 more situations where the rabbis choose to, in describing idol worship, for whatever reason, they describe it as putting a brick upright and worshiping it. So what's going on here, guys? The good old Maharal of Prague, if you remember him from a few weeks ago, Rabbi Yehuda Lau, okay, about 500 years ago. I couldn't get this into English, but I'm just going to share it. It's very beautiful. He tries to explain what's the deal with the brick. So listen to what he says. This is in mentioning, okay, in mentioning this story in the Talmud, in mentioning the story with Brother Jay worshiping the brick. This is what the Maharal of Prague has to say, and it's very, very, it's beautiful. He says, Brother Jay bowed down to Avodah Zarah, to idol worship. And there is nothing which is ready for a person like a brick. A brick is the most handy, accessible piece of stone that you can use and turn it into a god. You don't have to chisel out a stone. You don't have to make an idol. You don't have to buy an idol. It's a brick. You have bricks lying around from your home, okay, or from a building site, whatever it is. It's right there. So that's the first reason why the Talmud says brick. Meaning Brother Jay was so excited and so motivated to join the dark side and do Avodah Zarah. He didn't go shopping in Utah, for statues or whatever it was. He didn't go, to the Far East. He took what was handy. He found a brick right next to him and he started worshiping it because he was so hot and so his mind was set to leave Judaism and get involved in idol worship. So he got a brick and he started worshiping it. Okay? Then the Maharal continues to say, this is not only to show that he went and he got involved in a bad culture and he would worship Avodah Zarah and he left Hashem Yitbarach, the Hashem may be blessed. That's the first reason why he did that. And what his intention was by putting a brick upright and worshiping the brick and not the sun and not the moon and not the stars or the constellations, up there in the sky, and all kinds of other idol worship in the world. Why did he not do that? Why did he choose a brick? Not only for the practical accessibility of the brick right next to him. Why else? What's the deeper thing going on here? Is because anything that is different from Hashem is included in the brick. Meaning, okay, what does that mean? I know it sounded kind of odd. Okay, is that two things? The brick, what Brother Jay was doing here, and now I'm just summing up into English what the Maharal of Prague says right here. Brother Jay was going off and leaving Judaism and starting a new thing, a new type of idol worship. So he takes specifically a brick. If you want to continue, if you're building a building and it's under construction, and you take, let's say, and this is the brick. So what do you do with the brick? If you're building a building, you take the brick and you lay it down on some cement or mortar, and you lay down the brick, and you lay another brick, and another brick, and another brick. But Brother Jay was not continuing the building of the Jewish people, of the Jewish tradition. He took a brick, and instead of adding, like his rabbi thought he would do, instead of adding to the Jewish tradition and continuing the Masorah and the Torah and the teachings, he took a brick and he put it upright, not on the current structure, not on Judaism, not on Torah, but started a whole new building. You guys get the idea that's going on here behind the scenes? Okay, that's what the Maharal of Prague is saying. It's not by chance that the rabbis chose this terminology, whether it actually happened or not, because, again, it's trying to deliver this message that Brother Jay, instead of adding to the, thousands of years of history, as Walter said in The Big Lebowski, okay, instead of adding to this structure of Jewish tradition, he took a brick and he put it upright on the side, starting a whole new religion. That's Brother Jay. Third of all, the Maharal says, and that's what he says here at the end, the rabbis wanted to hint to what Brother Jay eventually claimed, or his disciples, the messengers, claimed about him. What is the word? What is hidden in the word levena, brick? What word is hidden? Leben, to a son. That Brother Jay claimed, or his disciple claimed in his name, that he was the son of God. And that again is hinted to in this word, levena. Okay? Leben. That he was God's son. God forbid. Okay? You guys get? You good? Okay? 3 ideas from the Maharal of Prague about Brother Jay. Again, and what we have till now, Brother Jay, according to the rabbis, was born 100 years BCE. He did not offer a different version of monotheism or of worshiping God or even some other kind of religion. He got into hardcore, heavy-duty idol worship, and he knew he was breaking off. And again, we saw it was a very sad story, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned from that. But, for our purposes, again, remembering the teachings that hopefully we can take with us for our daily life, he started a whole new religion, and it was focused on Avodah Zarah. Okay? And now I want to share with you, we have 4 minutes left. I just want to share with you this one thing, which is fascinating. Mamish fascinating, and I'm gonna jump around here in just a moment at the top of the page. The Rambam, Maimonides, this is number 11. What does he say in the idol worship laws? Hilchot Avdei Kochavim u'Mazalot. If you look it up in the Mishnah Torah of Maimonides, the Rambam, what does he write? Knaanim Avdei Kochavim u'Mazalotem. The Canaanites are idol worshippers, and Sunday is their festival. Therefore, in Israel, it is forbidden to conduct transactions with them on Thursday and Friday, and needless to say, on Sunday itself. Guys, Maimonides was writing this almost 1,000 years ago. He's telling us, make sure, you have to know that the Canaanites, the Knaanim, are idol worshippers, and do not do business with them. Thanks a lot. What am I supposed to do with that? When the Rambam is writing this almost 1,000 years ago, the Canaanites are long gone. The Knaanim do not exist anymore. So what he's telling us, that they are idol worshippers, and what is a practical ramification? I shouldn't do business with them? They haven't been around for years. What's going on here? Okay, look up here, top of the page. This is a photocopy of, can you guys see it? What I highlighted here? Yeah? Okay, here's the Rambam, Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, okay, Perek Tet, the 9th chapter. Look what he writes here in Halacha Daled. Knaanim Ovdei Kumhem. The Canaanites worship stars, okay, and the moons. And Sunday is their holy day, and you cannot do business with them. But what's going on here? Does that make sense that the Rambam Maimonides would write this? Okay, long after. This isn't a history book. Maimonides in this book is all about practical Jewish laws, how to behave and how not to behave. This isn't a recap of our history of the Canaanites when the Jews entered Israel 3,400 years ago or 2,400 years before Maimonides' times. Okay, this is practical law. So what does this have to? So if you look back at the sheet here, okay, this rabbi, Rabbi Menachem Karkovsky, lived in Vilna in 1929. What does he write? This is a mistake. This was censored out by the church. And in many prints, this appears. Okay? But this is not the original version. So check this out, guys. Okay? This is now a copy from one of the first prints in 1550 in Venice under the printing house of Marco Antonio, who had a Giuliani or something like that. I can't pronounce his Italian name, but this was a Christian guy. He had a printing press, okay, and this is a cover of Maimonides, printed, one of the first printing versions that I was able to find on the internet of Maimonides, of the Rambam, from 1550, Po Venezia, here in Venice, okay, Italy. This is a cover of the book. Now I'm jumping to that page that we just saw about the Canaanites, Avodah Zarah. Look at this. 9th chapter. You guys see this? This is the version of that exact page censored out by the Vatican, by the church. Okay, it was originally printed, and right away, they crossed over it. Check it out. This is the whole part. But you can see, that this is the beginning. It should say here Knaanim, the Canaanites. But it doesn't say Canaanites. The first letter, which they weren't able to mark out, is an aleph. You guys see this aleph? See the aleph? That's not the beginning of the word Canaanites. That's the beginning of a different word. Okay? Which word is it the beginning of? I'll share with you in just a moment. I just want to show you one more example. This is from Berlin, 1922. Another copy of the Rambam. 1922 in Berlin, printed. Check it out. Remember, this is supposed to be the fourth here, the fourth halacha, Daled. Okay, you see it's Daled, number 4. I'm jumping back to the 1922 Berlin version. Here we go, the 9th chapter. Here's the first aleph, the first law, and then we got Chet, 8. What happened to Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zion? Totally deleted, totally checked out. If you would have bought the Rambam's book in 1922 in Berlin, you should actually flee Berlin by then. But if you happen to stay in Germany in the 1920s and you bought this Maimonides, you would have, like, what's going on here? Aleph, and then it jumps to Chet, to 8, and it continues to 9. That whole part is just censored out. Check this out, guys. One more example. It's insane. Here, Mishnah Torah, Yada Chazakah, by our master Moshe, son of Maimon. Okay, with the Ravid, who's another rabbi who's in the book, translated by Rabbi Shimon Glazer, volume 1, New York, 1927. 1927, a few years after the Berlin version. Look at this. Here we go. Gimel, Daled, the fourth one. It totally, this yellow dot here is what's supposed to be there. That whole part is deleted. Okay, this whole part about the Canaanites worshiping is all deleted. Okay, and he just paraphrases the Rambam and jumps and censors out that whole version. And he starts by saying the day on which idolaters congregate to appoint a king, and he starts by saying here, okay, if the holiday of a particular group of idolaters lasted many days, even 3 or 4 or 10 days, then you can't do business with them. What happened to the whole part before with the Canaanites, or the censored version? So again, guys, I just showed you a few versions of how the Rambam was censored out. And now I'm going to show you an uncensored version. Where was this printed, guys? This was printed in Turkey, in Istanbul. Are there many Christians, at least when this was printed? Not so much. So here's a raw, uncut, unedited, behind the scenes, real version of the Rambam. And what does the Rambam write? I put it here in yellow. What does Maimonides write? Edomim, the Edomites. The Edomites, meaning coming from Esav, is another code word for who? For the Christians. Okay? For the Notzrim, the Christians. What does the Rambam write? The Edomim, the Christians, Ovdei Avodah Zarahen. They are idol worshippers. And Sunday is their holy day. That makes sense. The Canaanites' holy day was not Sunday. Who knows what their holy day was? But as we know, Christianity's holy day is Sunday. Now the Rambam makes sense. Now Maimonides makes sense. This is a real uncensored, uncut, raw, and true version, okay, of the Rambam, of Maimonides. Edomim, the Christians, idol worshippers, flat out. Okay? And here again is another version of a printed one, which you could also buy today, and it has the correction. Okay? Edomim, Ovdei Akumhem. The Edomim, the Edomites, the Christians, are Ovdei Avodah Zarah, are idol worshippers, and Sunday is their holy
Do we
day.
have to repeat it? Okay.
What was that? Okay. So you can see here, again, a lot of censored version. This is a new version of a new edition of the Rambam of Maimonides, but it's still censored. Knaanim, Canaanites. This other new version is not censored. Edomim. So when you go out, guys, and you buy a Rambam, a Maimonides, whether it's in Hebrew or in English, again, it could be different, okay, different versions, and it could have different numbers and different sources and censored parts out of it. Okay, we're going to end now. Okay, I'm not going to summarize what we've seen. I summarized it enough, I think. Okay, sad story with him. Lessons to be learned from our behavior, how to behave, interact with other human beings. And most, and I don't know if most importantly, but quite importantly, Christianity started out on the wrong foot. Idol worship, idolatry, not into monotheism. And as the Rambam points out, and we'll see a few other examples next week, God willing, the Christians, okay, as it should say here, Edomim, are Ovdei Avodah Zarah, are idol worshippers, are idolatry. And on that positive note, we're going to end the class, okay, for today. But if anybody has